All right, today we're diving into a really fascinating idea from the classic text. It gives us this incredible metaphor for understanding ourselves, visualizing the human soul as something you can almost see and touch, a crystal castle.
So get this. The core idea is that your soul is like this giant, beautiful castle made from a single, flawless crystal. And the author is emphatic here. You literally can't overstate how vast and amazing it is. At its very center, there's a brilliant sun, which represents God, just radiating light.
Okay, but here's where it gets interesting. To really appreciate the light, the text first asks us to imagine the total opposite. What happens when this amazing castle is plunged into darkness? What does the soul look like when it's in a state of what the author calls mortal sin?
And the image for this is so powerful. It's like someone has thrown a thick black cloth over the entire crystal castle. The sun is still shining away in the center, that never changes, but its light is completely blocked. The crystal can't reflect any of that beauty.
So, what does that actually mean in practice? Well, the text explains that when a soul is cut off from its source like this, even the good things it does don't have any eternal value or merit. It's like it's fundamentally turned away from its own purpose, and it just can't thrive.
This slide really shows the inner chaos, right? All the inhabitants of the castle, so our thoughts, our senses, our abilities, they're all thrown into complete disarray. They become, as the text says, blind and uncontrolled, which just leads to total disorder inside.
Okay, so after that pretty grim picture, the text completely flips the script and brings us back to the light. It shows us the castle as it's meant to be, in a state of grace, just buzzing with life and brilliance.
And the contrast here is just night and day. Instead of being a stagnant, murky pool, a soul in grace is like a spring of crystal clear water. You know, it's compared to a healthy tree planted right by a river, always drawing in nourishment and producing good fruit. It's alive.
And this is probably the most crucial point of all. The sun in the center, it never stops shining. The crystal of the soul, it never loses its inherent value. The only thing that changes is the obstacle, that black cloth. The moment that's removed, the soul instantly starts reflecting the light again.
So, that's the big question, right? If the castle is covered in darkness, how do you get back inside to clean things up? Well, the source gives us a clear path, and it all starts by entering the very first rooms of the castle.
So what's the key to the front door? The text is really specific about this. The one and only way to start the journey inward is through prayer and reflection. That's the entrance.
And once you're through that door, you find yourself in the first set of rooms. And the main job here? It's all about cultivating self-knowledge through humility. The text says this step is absolutely essential. You can't go any further without it.
But here's a really fascinating twist on how you're supposed to do that. The source suggests you can't really get to know yourself by just looking at yourself. True self-awareness only comes when you first look towards God's greatness. And it's in the contrast with that perfection that our own flaws and messiness are revealed. Now you might think this would be totally crushing, right? But the text says it's the complete opposite. This kind of honest self-assessment is actually what frees us from all those timid, weak, and cowardly thoughts. Paradoxically, it makes us stronger and more capable. But just because you've made it through the front door doesn't mean the journey is easy. In fact, the author warns that these first rooms are actually teeming with hidden dangers, which are compared to venomous reptiles. And what's so interesting is the kind of threats we're talking about here. It's not just the obvious stuff. We're talking about everything from external temptations like worldly honors to internal struggles. The guide even warns about things that can look good on the surface, like indiscreet zeal or traps that are disguised to look like light. Those are much harder to spot. And the source makes it super clear. These obstacles aren't just random bad luck. They're described as intentional traps, placed there by forces that absolutely do not want the soul to move any deeper into the castle. So the whole point of these dangers, these fierce and wild beasts, is to distract and discourage you. They're meant to be so overwhelming that they blind the eyes, making the person forget all about the beauty of the castle and focus only on the struggle right in front of them. So, how in the world do you get past all of this? The answer given is actually pretty simple and kind of profound. You can't do it alone. The only way through is to recognize your own weakness and rely completely on divine help.
And that brings us to one last really powerful image from the text. Humility isn't a one-and-done kind of thing. It's a constant, quiet, productive activity. just like a bee working in its honeycomb. It's the foundational virtue that keeps the whole journey going. So we'll leave you with that to think about. What does that image of the bee, always at work, mean to you?